This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. My inbox is filled to the brim, so let me go ahead and say this now. Unless you're the CEO of Newsy, you might not hear back from me for a few days. Here's what we got for y'all. In a phone call over the weekend, President Trump made clear that he wasn't giving up on his fight to overturn the election, no matter how improbable. We're fact-checking President Trump's controversial phone call to the Georgia Secretary of State. Plus, with Trump on his way out, we'll take a closer look at how the GOP will navigate 2021 without one of their own in the Oval Office. But first, here's what you need to know right now.
You know what's at stake, so I have a question for you. Are you ready to show America that Georgia's a red state? Yes, indeed, we're gonna do it.
The whole country is watching you. Georgia has so much power right now.
More than 3 million Georgia voters already cast their ballots for 2 Senate runoffs during early voting, which is a state record. The remaining voters will head to the polls tomorrow. The winners between Republican U.S. Senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue and their Democratic challengers, Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff, will help determine the fate of Joe Biden's legislative agenda. That's because the Georgia races will determine who has control over the Senate. Once Biden takes office later this month, Democrats will control the executive branch and at least half the legislative branch. Winning both seats in Georgia would give Democrats unified control of the executive and legislative branches. Winning Georgia's seats would ensure that Democrats have a say on which bills come to the Senate floor for debate, instead of Mitch McConnell. Biden's main priorities coming into office are the coronavirus and the economy, and tomorrow's Georgia runoffs will have a big impact on what's able to be done. Also, hang in there, Georgia. Election season is almost over. More than 4 million Americans have received the first dose of a COVID-19 vaccine. It's not as many as experts hoped by the first week of 2021, but it is progress. The suggested wait time is anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks to get the second dose, but Britain decided to delay it even longer. The idea is to try and get more people vaccinated since one dose does provide some protection. British officials say they will allow a gap of up to 12 weeks between vaccine doses. It's worth noting delays like that were not tested in trials. The second shot is supposed to boost the body's defense against COVID-19, so it's unclear if pushing it could affect the efficacy. Dr. Anthony Fauci says the US will stick to what's been proven and keep on track with the original plan. Today, hospital workers in New Jersey got their second dose of the Pfizer vaccine. This week, Congress is supposed to meet for a routine and drama-free procedure to officially approve Joe Biden as the next president of the United States. But the joint session on Wednesday will likely be anything but typical. In a last-ditch effort, a group of at least 12 Republican senators and several other GOP House members plan to object to the elector votes cast in key states, using baseless claims about voter fraud, similar to President Trump's claims. While the objection won't change the election results, it will prolong the process of making Biden's win official. The move is also creating a deep divide within the party. In a statement Sunday, the former House Speaker Paul Ryan said, "It is difficult to conceive of a more anti-democratic and anti-conservative act than a federal intervention to overturn the results of state-certified election." With almost every option exhausted, it's hard to see anything changing with the election outcome, but President Trump has yet to give up on the election either. Over the weekend, a recorded conversation between Trump and Georgia's Secretary of State was leaked. During the call, the president pushes more claims of voter fraud, despite several recounts in the state. At one point, Trump even asks the Georgia Secretary of State to find the votes he needs to win the state. Newsy's Patrick Terpstra looked into the claims made on the controversial call.
At the start of his call with Georgia election officials, President Trump says he won the state.
I think it's pretty clear that we won. We won very substantially, Georgia.
Not true. President-elect Joe Biden beat Donald Trump in Georgia by more than 11,000 votes out of 5 million cast. It was a close race, but Georgia ballots have now been counted, recounted, and recounted again. The results have been certified by the Secretary of State and Governor, both Republicans. The president also says, falsely, there were 300,000 fake ballots added to the tally late at night.
Anywhere from 250 to 300,000 ballots were dropped mysteriously into the rolls.
He appears to be referring to the counting of mail-in ballots, which favored Democrats. President Trump told his supporters not to vote by mail.
It's a catastrophe waiting to happen.
So more Democrats and Republicans mailed in their ballots, which weren't counted as quickly. But this was expected, not mysterious. The president also says 5,000 dead people in Georgia voted.
And a minimum is close to about 5,000 voters.
A Newsy investigation this fall discovered that there are rare occasions where voters will vote in place of someone who has died. Oftentimes, this is a recently deceased spouse or loved one. Georgia's Secretary of State says 2 votes were cast in the names of dead people this year, not 5,000. At another point in the call, President Trump says he heard ballots were being shredded.
We hear they're shredding thousands and thousands of ballots. And now what they're saying, oh, we're just cleaning up the office.
There was shredding going on in Cobb County, Georgia, but not of cast ballots. County officials say they got rid of old emails, absentee ballot duplicates, and other documents they say were not relevant to the election.
They were doing normal, office shredding, getting rid of old stuff, and we investigated that.
President Trump also brought up debunked concerns about voting machines manufactured by Dominion.
I mean, in other states, we think we found tremendous corruption with Dominion machines, but we'll have to see.
The president's own Homeland Security Department found no evidence that any voting system deleted or lost votes, changed votes, or was in any way compromised. Patrick Terpstra, Newsy, Washington.
I'm not going anywhere, but I'll meet you back here after the break.
Newsy cuts through.
The Republican Party will have to navigate 2021 a little differently without one of their own in the nation's highest office. But a former President Trump could still wield a ton of influence within his own party. Newsy's Willie James Inman spoke to some experts to tell us how 2021 could shape up for the GOP.
Republicans are preparing for a life without a Trump administration in 2021. But even with President Trump out of power, experts say his presence could still influence the party. Where do you see the GOP, Republicans specifically, going in 2021 with President Trump out of the White House?
We know that about 72% of Republicans have said that they think that Trump is a model for the future of the party. And so that leaves a number of moderates a little bit in the minority there.
The outgoing president's enduring presence and personality in politics could continue to divide the party well after he leaves Washington. His tweets and cable news appearances will still generate attention and could even continue to give life to things like claims of voter fraud months after Joe Biden is sworn in, or even freeze the field of Republicans looking to wage their own White House bids in 2024. But it may also be an opportunity for the GOP to focus on more traditional Republican themes.
This is Trump's party from 2016 on. The question is it going to remain Trump's party, and will there be opportunities for moderates and others to get back to the Republican orthodoxy and the types of policies that they really prefer, such as free trade, less of a focus on immigration, and the restoration of U.S. power abroad.
The president has reportedly expressed interest in re-entering the media landscape, and he's formed a political action committee looking to maintain influence over his millions of supporters and perhaps play kingmaker in key elections.
While he consistently has 30 to 40% support across the board, it's never really grown. The question is, can he keep that 30 or 40% together, and is that enough to win elections at all of those levels?
In the years ahead leading up to the midterms, some Republicans say the party needs to focus more on reaching out to diverse groups of voters to increase the base.
I think one of the things that can be done, again, is getting back to the core of working people, not just working people who love President Trump, but all working people.
Willie James Inman, Newsy, Washington.
Long-distance relationships can be pretty trash, and I know that from experience. But some international couples have been separated by more than just distance during the pandemic. Last week, President Trump extended a freeze on most visas to, as he puts it, to continue to protect American workers. Newsy's Ben Shamiso tells us about 2 international couples who've been separated for months because of the president's immigration freeze.
Courtney Watkins has been separated from his Senegalese fiancée for 16 months.
It really plays with your mind.
and not just your heart, but your mind.
The binational couple met in China in 2017, where they both lived at the time. They instantly fell in love, got engaged, and moved in together.
We became a couple on Christmas, so Christmas is our anniversary date.
After a while, they decided they wanted a future together in the US. So in mid-2019, Watkins flew back home to Los Angeles, but his partner stayed in China to apply for a fiancé visa at the local US consulate.
It was a terrible, crying, soppy goodbye, but that we were thinking 6 months.
A year and a half later, they are still living at opposing ends of the world. Their applications delayed by Trump administration policies curbing immigration during the pandemic. COVID-19 travel restrictions worldwide have greatly affected the lives of international couples just about everywhere. But the situation has been particularly tough for those hoping to settle in the US.
You ask yourself how wanted and accepted you really are in the country where you live.
German immigrant Rabia Krugel has been living in the US for nearly a decade and is a permanent resident.
I do my part here. I pay my taxes and whatnot.
She met her Iraqi husband while she was on vacation in India and has been trying to bring him to the US ever since they got married in Baghdad 15 months ago.
We met in Goa and are pretty much inseparable since then.
Their immigration petition has been in limbo ever since President Trump issued a ban on most visas to, as he puts it, protect American workers during the pandemic.
It's really legal immigration that has been banned and not illegal immigration.
But not everything is lost for Krugel, Watkins and their partners stranded overseas. Both couples hope they can soon reunite in the US thanks to recent legal victories related to their immigration cases and thanks to the prospect of a new administration. Ben Chamisso, Newsy.
It's inauguration season, and luckily, we shouldn't have to hear any BS about crowd size discrepancies this year. In case you haven't been keeping track, we're 16 days away from President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration, and because of the pandemic, a lot of y'all should probably be watching from home. But if you do make it in person, don't expect it to look anything like it did in 2017. National reporter Joe St. George gives us a preview of an inauguration unlike anything we've seen before.
The platform outside the United States Capitol is nearly finished. Press risers have been put up. Fresh paint was applied earlier this week.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear.
But because of this pandemic, President-elect Biden's inauguration will be very different from his first one as vice president back in 2009. Inauguration change number one, President-elect Biden telling supporters not to come. While some will no doubt still flock to the National Mall, it will likely be very sparse. No crowd records will be broken this time around. Inauguration change number two, members of Congress have limited tickets. Usually the area surrounding the Capitol is filled by those with official invites. In previous years, members of Congress distributed hundreds of thousands of formal invitations. This year, each member gets to invite a +1. Inauguration change number three, no lunch inside the Capitol. In a normal year after the swearing in, the new president dines with members of Congress. That event is now canceled. Inauguration change number four, inaugural parade and inaugural balls being reconfigured.
I do think that they'll continue to try to engage with people virtually.
Rachel Gloss is a Washington, D.C. based event planner. She says in a normal year, she'd coordinate a half dozen inaugural galas and balls. This year, for obvious reasons, her usual clients have canceled the cocktails.
Right now, we don't have anything on deck.
And finally, inauguration change number five is the one most up in the air. What role will President Trump have? The morning he took office 4 years ago, the Obamas greeted President Trump at the White House. Obama attended his swearing in. Biden inaugural committee co-chair, Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester.
At this point, I'm not sure what President Trump will want to do on that day. It would be unfortunate if he chooses not to participate, but I will tell you that the committee itself are working to ensure that people across the country can participate.
Of course, one thing is for sure, when the sun rises over the U.S. Capitol on January 20th, 2021, it will be an inauguration unlike any other. In Washington, I'm Joe St. George.
If you haven't done so already, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter using the hashtag #NewsyInTheLoop. And no, it's not too late to make tweeting wildly at Christian one of your resolutions. The vaccine rollout isn't happening as quickly as some experts have hoped, and that's for a number of different reasons. Here's one. Some healthcare and other frontline workers are just straight up refusing to take the vaccine. The lack of vaccine confidence is just one more hurdle to getting over this pandemic. So here's a question. Can people be forced to take a vaccine? Newsy's Amber Strong dives into that question in our new series focused on combating mis- and disinformation called Dose of Truth.
There's a lot of false information around about the two leading COVID-19 vaccines in the U.S. We wanted to provide the facts and answer some questions. I'm not a doctor, but we know a few. We asked, can I be forced or required to get the vaccine?
My understanding, it is not required. It will be strongly recommended. The idea behind vaccinations, particularly in the middle of a pandemic, is you need approximately 60 to 80% of the population to be vaccinated to eradicate COVID.
That truly depends on what you do. Most healthcare workers are going to be at the mercy of their healthcare systems, or if you're in a vital or critical infrastructure role, your job may mandate it as part of return to work.
2020 was a pretty devastating year for the concert industry. We've previously reported that independent music venues were some of the first to close and will be some of the last to open, partly because of the support staff necessary to make concerts happen. But many artists and musicians and booking agents are feeling hopeful that this year will bring back live music, eventually. National reporter Elizabeth Ruiz has more.
Hoping that this summer we'll all be able to have some outdoor shows at least. Once we get vaccinated, once we get pricked, we can pick.
Max Gomez is a singer-songwriter from Taos, New Mexico. He recently wrapped up another virtual concert.
It's a lonesome sound of shame.
Max says this year has completely uprooted his traveling musician lifestyle.
I travel constantly from town to town, city to city to perform, live shows.
However, Max says this year has actually been quite productive for him when it comes to writing music from home.
It hasn't slowed me down as much as you might think.
Nonetheless, the concert industry as a whole has really been suffering. Alex Spang is a booking agent with New Frontier Touring in Nashville.
2019, I believe, was probably the best year of live music on record, and 2020 will be the worst since live music existed, however many years ago that was.
Alex says he thinks the concert industry has been one of the hardest hit since it employs so many people.
There's bus drivers, there's light techs, there's assistants, there's caterers, there's everything you can picture in a small business.
According to a report from IBIS World, a company that offers trusted industry research, the concert and event promotion industry experienced a 60% decrease in revenue in 2020 compared to 2019. However, Alex is hopeful the industry will make a comeback in 2021. It's just unclear who or what will give the industry the green light to hold concerts.
I'd wager it'll be a little messy come the summer if there isn't a clear public trust in going in.
So far, Alex says a lot of shows from 2020 have been postponed for the summer and fall of 2021. He's heard that timeline is a definite possibility, but it's likely there will be more precautions.
The way rapid testing has kind of picked up, there's talks of it being your car pulls in, you get rapid tested. When you get your result that it's negative, they let you in, kind of like a TSA situation. I've heard that be tossed about. I've heard that there's apps being made to you prove that you've been vaccinated and they let you in.
The success of the industry moving forward will ultimately be up to concert goers.
There is some PTSD and maybe the first couple shows will be weird, but I think as a whole, people can jump back in the swing of things pretty quickly.
As for Max Gomez, he says he's grateful for his supportive fans who have helped him keep the lights on. He wants to encourage people to continue financially helping small music venues to keep them alive.
I was so shocked and scared when all of this first happened, but I'm happy to report that I've been lucky enough to adapt and sort of persevere.
I'm Elizabeth Ruiz reporting.
That's it for us, gang. As always, thanks for watching and coming back for more In the Loop in the new year. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. More top stories are headed your way right now.